Good morning, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Thursday, March 19th, 2026 at 9:04 in the morning. So we're beginning our day to have more testimony on H 160, which is an act related to creating a right to repair for medical devices. We have a couple of presenters this morning. Justin, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So if you would like to just state your name and your affiliation and continue on with your testimony, that would be great.
Happy to do so. My name is Justin Leventhal. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst at the American Consumer Institute. Um, Chair Marquette, Vice Chair Granning, Ranking Member White, and members of the State of Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. I'm Justin Leventhal, Senior Policy Analyst at the American Consumer Institute, a nonprofit research organization focused on consumer policy. Thank you for the opportunity to offer comments on H160 regarding medical device repair. I'm here today to express concerns about H160 and its potential impact on patient safety. I support competitive markets and I support repair, but when the product is a critical life-saving medical device, the rules must be built around patient safety first and foremost. I'm here as a free market advocate speaking from the perspective of patient safety concerns surrounding the potential harm for when this equipment is repaired improperly. H160 would mandate that manufacturers provide parts, tools, software, documentation, and training to repair medical equipment to any third party who wants it, regardless of the quality of service the third party provides. Medical devices include high-risk equipment such as ventilators, defibrillators, imaging machines, and more. H160 forces a broad mandate that risks patient harm. Medical devices are fundamentally different than consumer products because improper repairs risk patients' health and lives. Voiding a warranty when somebody makes a mistake trying to repair a computer has far less serious consequences than when a defibrillator or an MRI is repaired incorrectly. Authorized repair providers are held to the standards of the manufacturer and have been trained and approved by the manufacturer. Because the manufacturer retains liability after the repairs, it is incentivized to ensure that anyone authorized to repair the equipment is highly qualified. H160 would require manufacturers to provide repair and training to unauthorized repair providers, as well as tools, but it does not set any standard for those receiving the training. It removes the incentives for quality standards of the manufacturer without replacing them in any way. Small errors in diagnostics, surgery, or countless other procedures can be the difference between life and death for patients. H160 mandates access to the tools of repair to repair medical equipment, not the outcome of those repairs or the quality of the work done. While H160 would remove manufacturer liability for errors made by unauthorized repair providers, it also makes those errors more likely. Patients are more concerned that nothing goes wrong with their medical equipment than who is liable if it does. Once something goes wrong, H160 opens the door for unauthorized repair providers to blame the manufacturer and the manufacturer to blame the provider, regardless of who is at fault. If something goes wrong, patients will ask why lawmakers made it so hard to figure out who to hold accountable. Among the data that H160 would require to be provided are codes and passwords that allow access to the equipment. This greatly broadens the scope of people with access to information that can be used to compromise the security of medical equipment, again, without any standards or certification for who is receiving it. Hundreds of cyber attacks are already launched against hospitals each year, and making security information so easy to access risks patients' health and safety to potential malicious actions. Patient safety and cybersecurity must be the non-negotiable baseline. H160 does not meet that baseline. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Justin. Any question? Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Leventhal. The question I have had to do with the comment you made towards the conclusion of your testimony about information that would be shared with third party, sort of not reaching thresholds for security, I guess maybe was the point. And I was thinking about the amount of information that hospitals retain currently at a standard of confidentiality, et cetera. Would that not, do you see there's some daylight between those two things, or is that not where you think the information would be held?
It was breaking up a little bit. I think you're asking if it would compromise, if this is adding additional compromising information. Is
The question is, would the hospital IT networks provide the necessary amount of security given all the other sensitive information that is entrusted to them?
Well, currently hospitals already run into issues with IT security, with data being held and with cyber attacks. This opens up one more potential venue of that.
Other questions? Justin, you talked about unauthorized, not untrained third-party repair people. But if you were required, or if the company was required to provide the training to that third-party person, wouldn't that be a certified training that they would become an authorized provider?
The training under this bill doesn't make them an authorized provider. The bill distinguishes between the authorized providers that the company has explicitly delegated and then thus retains reliability when they repair something, as compared to somebody else who can go through the training, doesn't necessarily have to maintain it, and then the bill doesn't actually establish any standard for that training. So once the training is done, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are any more qualified than anybody else, especially if the company itself is not willing to put their name behind it.
Okay. That could be taken care of with some additional language. Okay. Any other questions? Emily?
Hi, my question for you is about rural communities that have a hard time getting access to service. Do you have any thoughts on that and the sort of timeliness?
Mhm. Rural healthcare concerns are a major issue, and it is, as well as repairs and everything else. I don't have a specific thought on that, except that it isn't any more difficult for a repair person to get to a rural community than anywhere else. The typical issues there come down to how much money the hospital has to pay for repairs in the first place. And this bill does not necessarily do anything to reduce those costs.
Any other questions for Justin? Great, Justin, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nathan, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
So if you'd like to just state your name and your affiliation and go on with your testimony.
All right. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Proctor. I am the Senior Director of the Right to Repair campaign for the Public Interest Research Group. I have written several dozen or more than a dozen reports on right to repair. I've studied it, conducted interviews with dozens and dozens of medical device technicians, and surveyed 220 in 2020 and most recently 107 technicians to ask them exactly what they're experiencing in hospitals. So yes, that is the kind of basis of the information that I have. I want to start by saying that every hospital in Vermont already hires outside of original equipment manufacturers to conduct repairs. They have their own in-house teams that do these repairs, and they hire independent service organizations. The FDA, the hospital also keeps track of what happens with the devices when they fail. Just to make a comment on liability, by far the most liable party, the one most likely to be sued, the one that's involved in the most lawsuits, as is probably obvious if you think about it for a second, are the actual medical facilities providing care. Those are the places that people sue. Those are the people view as responsible. And those are the people with the strongest incentive to ensure the patient is being properly cared for and is not experiencing adverse effects. They are the most liable party and therefore have the strongest incentive to ensure that the equipment is properly cared for. And they make a choice in many situations to hire outside of the manufacturers because the manufacturers take longer to respond. They don't do the work to the same level as their competitors, or they charge way more without having a noticeable quality difference. I know hospitals which carefully track the failure of different pieces of equipment and have found that manufacturers do not provide the same high level of quality as the ISO that they're contracting with. In that situation, why would we want to restrict that independent service organization's ability to provide safer, lower cost care to the hospital if the manufacturer can just program the equipment to lock out all service from the ISO because they're losing these contracts because their business is not competing properly? That seems just like wasting money in the healthcare system to get worse outcomes. And in fact, that is what the problem that I'm trying to solve by supporting legislation like this. The FDA looked at millions of device failure reports submitted by hospitals, concluded that there was not a safety and quality issue with repair happening outside of the manufacturer's direct control, and that more regulation to protect patients was not necessary. And to me, I mean, like, if there was an issue of patient safety, a group like U.S. Public Interest Research Group, we would want to care for safety. But this is one of those very rare things in healthcare that both improves patient outcomes and cuts cost. And there's clear and obvious evidence that manufacturers are the most expensive way to fix medical equipment, and that in-house, hospitals save a significant portion of revenue by being able to fix these devices in-house. Their problem is that they're routinely denied access to the basic service information, service keys, and other parts, tools, and information you need to conduct repairs. In our most recent survey, 79% of the biomeds we surveyed, which worked for the manufacturers, most of which work for hospitals, reported being denied access to service information like manuals somewhat frequently or most of the time. So that's close to 80% says it's at least somewhat frequently or most of the time. 70% responded that they commonly experience diagnostic tool restrictions causing a delay in patient care. 83% say that equipment downtime increases from repair barriers happens either somewhat frequently or most of the time. All right, none of the respondents in our recent survey reported that they had never been denied access to repairing critical information. The final thing I want to say is about security and cybersecurity. There are reasons why the hospitals are targeted by ransomware gangs and other malicious actors. They almost always target known security vulnerabilities. The biggest examples have been around older versions of Windows. The problem that we're facing is not that repair technicians are opening up this equipment to hacks. The equipment, requiring physical access to the equipment to compromise it is not a viable strategy for a ransomware gang. They do not hire physical people to go into hospitals. They attack things over the internet, and those are just not implicated by this bill. And the problems that we have around securing medical devices honestly would be improved with greater access to service information. It would empower the hospitals to better secure the devices because they would have more information and technical access that they might need to devise kind of an anti-intrusion schema. With that, I'll conclude my testimony.
Any questions for Nathan?
Thank you for your testimony. I'm interested, you referenced FDA data about safety and looking at, so I'm wondering if you can provide more information on that or a reference so I can take a look at the study.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that was discussed, at length in the last hearing, but I'm talking about the 2018 FDA servicing report, where they looked at millions of device failure records and concluded that there's no safety problems. I would say it would be essential, I would say, if you're considering this legislation, to at least read the executive summary of that report. It's
thanks. I do remember it was discussed, but that's helpful to know the title, so I'll look at it.
Other questions for Nathan?
Thanks, Nathan. I'm just curious, like reading the report that you sent, it sounds like I think a question that's come up has been around like training and certification, but it sounds like often, I guess I would like to hear from you for your thoughts on people who are it sounded like people who are qualified and or certified to access this, like to fix these machines, couldn't do so because they're locked out, like either legally or contractually or whatever, rather than, or like physical devices or software devices keeping them from doing it, rather than like their ability to like fix a thing. Like, just wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. Your ability, your qualifications from a technical standpoint, and your permission from the manufacturer are two completely separate items. I know technicians who work part-time for the manufacturer, so are authorized, credentialed, and allowed to fix equipment Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and are unqualified, uncertified on Thursday and Friday. It has nothing to do with the technician's actual ability. It is a mechanism for the manufacturer to control access. Their essential argument is that it's a benevolent dictatorship over the control of that they do it to protect the patients and the hospitals. There is no evidence that that is in fact true. But it is incredibly commercially valuable to them to be able to control who and under what conditions people are allowed to fix equipment.
Any other questions? Nathan, thank you. Dr. Dina, do you have anything else you wanna?
No, I think that add Nathan, I think.
Great.
Our position pretty fun.
Thank you both very much for joining us this morning. But I think there's some things that we can do for language, make it clearer, but, we've missed crossover deadline anyway, but I think that, I think you all can give a lot of thought to this. I think it's something that we really should push on next year.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
don't see many valid reasons why. We could do something.
Yeah.
The testimony that we've taken so far. Mechanical engineers that are doing the repairs, and I think a lot of it just sits with the manufacturers not wanting to give in to letting a third party provide the repairs. Keep control over the fiefdom, sounds like.
Because the liability question was interesting. When a third party performs repairs, is there a give and take, or would let's say a hospital expect that liability would still rest fully with the manufacturer?
I think that's something that could be talked about. I think that, there could be a requirement that there is liability where the manufacturer could be indemnified if the third party made the repairs.
Yeah, with other kinds of equipment, there's that.
That's what I
Right,
understand.
I think there's ways around
Yeah,
a lot of the issues that have been brought up.
yeah, I agree.
And I think you want language in there that talks about, third party repair person needs to be qualified, like a mechanical engineer type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think there was just testimony that the hospital is quite confident in liability no matter what, because typically
Sure.
the consumer's gonna go to them
Mhm.
first.
Okay. Well, I think that's all we have until 10 o'clock, so we'll go off live, we'll be back at 10. We'll be hearing from Rick Gardner he's the Global Data Protection Officer for Lexus. So we'll go